The chaos in the emergency room at Seattle General Hospital reached a fever pitch as Brynlee Harper fought to stabilize the ferry captain pulled from the icy waters of Puget Sound. "You think that ring makes you special?" sneered Dr. Lang as he snatched at Brynlee's hand, the diamond band glinting under the harsh lights, exposing her marriage to another woman right there in front of the groaning patient. But no one could have predicted that the man whose life Brynlee had just saved would later force the entire staff to confront their cruelty in the most humiliating way possible. Rain hammered the windows of the ER like accusations while monitors beeped frantically around Captain Elias Thorne. Brynlee's gloved hands moved with practiced precision, checking his vitals, adjusting the oxygen mask, and calling out orders to the residents. She had been on shift for 14 hours already, but the moment the Coast Guard brought in the survivors from the capsized Bainbridge Island ferry, her adrenaline kicked in. Thorne was the worst off. Hypothermia, cracked ribs, and a nasty head wound from the collision with a cargo ship in the storm. Brynlee had personally performed the emergency thoracentesis that kept his lung from collapsing. She didn't care that the media vans were already lining the driveway outside. Saving lives was what she did. Then the shift supervisor, Nurse Ratched, no one called her that to her face but everyone thought it, stormed in, waving a tablet. "Harper, the press is demanding statements." "And what the hell is this?" She grabbed Brynlee's left hand, yanking it up, so the simple white gold band with its tiny engraved C+B forever caught the light. Laughter rippled through the cluster of nurses and techs who had gathered to watch the drama. "Didn't know we hired storybook princesses. You gonna tell the captain his savior likes girls?" Brynlee's face burned, but she kept her voice steady. "My personal life has nothing to do with his vitals. He's stable now. Someone page neuro." She pulled her hand free and turned back to the bed, refusing to let them see the sting. Inside her chest, her heart hammered harder than the rain. Clementine had slipped that ring on her finger 3 years ago in a small courthouse ceremony, with only their closest friends as witnesses. They had promised each other that love would always be louder than hate. Today hate was winning the volume war. Captain Thorne stirred, groaning as the pain meds kicked in. His salt and pepper beard was matted with salt water, his captain's uniform cut away in shreds. "Nurse, you saved me?" he rasped, eyes fluttering open just long enough to focus on Brynlee's name tag. She nodded once, offering a professional smile. "You're going to be okay, Captain. Rest now." Dr. Lang snorted loud enough for the whole bay to hear. "Yeah, rest up, buddy. Your guardian angel here is married to another chick. Bet that makes you feel real safe." The words landed like slaps. A couple of the younger nurses giggled. Brynlee's cheeks flamed, but she refused to cry, not here, not in front of the man she had just dragged back from the edge of death. She finished charting, adjusted his 4-1 last time, and walked out of the bay, head high, shoulders squared. In the break room, she sank onto the bench and pulled out her phone. One text from Clementine. "Heard about the ferry on the news. You okay, baby? I'm bringing coffee after my last class." Brynlee stared at the screen, throat tight. She typed back, "I'm fine. Love you more than anything." She didn't add the part about the ring or the laughter. Not yet. By the time her shift ended, the story had already leaked. Someone had recorded the mocking on a phone and posted it anonymously to a local Seattle subreddit. "Lesbian nurse saves ferry captain, then gets bullied for wedding ring." The comments were vicious. Brynlee drove home through the drizzle, gripping the wheel until her knuckles whitened. She had no idea that the real storm was only beginning. Clementine was waiting on the porch of their small Capitol Hill bungalow when Brynlee pulled up, the porch light turning her dark curls into a halo. She didn't say a word, just opened her arms, and Brynlee walked straight into them, burying her face in the familiar scent of lavender shampoo and acrylic paint from Clem's after-school art classes. "They saw the ring," Brynlee whispered finally. "Laughed right in front of the patient." Clementine pulled back, cupping Brynlee's face. "Then they're idiots. You saved a man's life today. That's what matters." But Brynlee could see the worry in her wife's brown eyes. They had talked about this moment 100 times in the quiet safety of their bed. The day the world would stop pretending their marriage was invisible. Tonight the world had stopped pretending, and it hurt more than either of them had imagined. Inside the house, the TV was muted on the local news. The ferry disaster led every segment. 27 passengers rescued, 4 still missing. Captain Elias Thorne listed in stable condition, thanks to heroic efforts of hospital staff. No mention of the ring yet, but the subreddit post already had 12,000 upvotes. Brynlee's phone buzzed non-stop. Colleagues sending screenshots, friends asking if she was okay, her mother leaving voicemails in that careful tone that always preceded lectures about living a normal life. The next morning the hospital HR department called her in before her shift. Director Morales sat behind a desk stacked with incident reports. "We've received complaints, Brynlee, about professionalism. Some patients and staff feel your personal choices are distracting." Brynlee stared at her. "My personal choices kept Captain Thorne alive yesterday." Morales sighed. "The board is nervous. Media is camped outside. We're suggesting you remove the ring while on duty, just until things calm down." Brynlee's stomach dropped. "You're asking me to hide my marriage." "We're asking you to think about the hospital's image during a crisis," Morales corrected. "Your evaluations are exemplary. Don't throw that away." Brynlee left the office without promising anything. In the locker room she twisted the ring on her finger, feeling its weight like an anchor. That afternoon Clementine met her for lunch at the hospital cafeteria. They chose a corner table, but phones still pointed their way. "My parents called again," Brynlee said quietly. "Dad says if I don't tone it down he's pulling the money he loaned us for the house." Clementine reached across the table, lacing their fingers together ring to ring. "Then we sell the house. I'm not letting them make you erase us." Their eyes met, and for a moment the noise of the cafeteria faded. This was why Brynlee had fallen in love with her. The quiet steel that never bent. But steel could crack. By evening the local news had picked up the subreddit story. A reporter stood outside the hospital holding a microphone. Sources say the nurse who saved Captain Thorne was publicly ridiculed for wearing a same-sex wedding ring. Hospital administrators have yet to comment. Brynlee watched the clip on her phone in the staff lounge and felt the ground shift beneath her feet. One decision, keep the ring or take it off, now felt like it could cost her everything. The pressure built like a storm surge. Brynlee's shifts became minefields. Colleagues who used to joke with her now fell silent when she entered the room. Patients whispered. One elderly woman actually asked if Brynlee was safe to be around children. Brynlee smiled through it all, but each insult carved another groove into her confidence. At home Clementine tried to be the rock, but Brynlee could see the exhaustion in her eyes too. Then the lawsuit threat arrived. Families of the missing passengers were suing the ferry company, and somehow Brynlee's name appeared on the witness list because she had been first to treat Thorne. Their lawyer wanted a deposition. "They're going to ask about everything," the hospital's attorney warned her in a tense meeting. "Including your domestic situation. The defense will try to discredit you any way they can." Brynlee's blood ran cold. If she testified truthfully about the timeline of Thorne's care, her sexuality would become public evidence. If she asked to be removed from the case, the hospital might fire her for lack of cooperation. That night she and Clementine sat on their couch with takeout Thai food growing cold. "I could just take the ring off at work," Brynlee said, voice cracking. "No one would know." Clementine set her fork down. "And then what? Every day you walk into that building you erase me a little more. Is that the life you want for us?" The question hung between them, heavy with every argument they had ever avoided. Brynlee thought of her mother's voice on the phone earlier. "Honey, think of your future. Think of kids someday." She had hung up without answering. The next day Captain Thorne was moved from ICU to a regular room. Brynlee was assigned to check on him during rounds. When she entered, he was sitting up, looking remarkably better for a man who had nearly drowned. "Nurse Harper," he said, voice still rough. "They told me what you did. Thank you." She nodded professionally, checking his chart. Then he noticed her hand. The ring was still there. His bushy eyebrows drew together. "That doctor, he said some ugly things about you yesterday. I was half out of it, but I heard." Brynlee froze. "It's fine, Captain. Focus on your recovery." But Thorne wasn't finished. "My daughter's gay," he said quietly. "She came out to me last year. Took me too long to get it right. Hearing them laugh at you, it reminded me of the things I used to say before I knew better." Brynlee didn't know how to respond, so she simply adjusted his pillow and left the room, heart pounding. For the first time in days someone had seen her. Not the lesbian nurse, but the person who had saved his life. The media storm escalated overnight. A conservative talk show ran a segment titled "Woke Nurse Drama Endangers Patients," clipping the leaked video and adding dramatic music. Comments flooded the hospital's social media demanding Brynlee's firing. Inside the building, things grew worse. Someone left a printed screenshot of the subreddit post taped to her locker with the word "disgusting" scrawled across it. Security reviewed the tapes but claimed they couldn't identify the culprit. Brynlee stopped eating in the cafeteria. She ate protein bars in her car between shifts. Clementine's school wasn't immune either. A parent complained that the art teacher's wife is all over the news. The principal called Clementine in for a conversation about community values. When Brynlee picked her up that evening, Clementine's eyes were red. "I told them if they want to fire me for who I love, they'll have to do it in writing." They drove home in silence, hands clasped over the gear shift. The hospital board scheduled an emergency ethics review. Brynlee was asked to appear and explain why she hadn't removed the ring despite HR's suggestion. She spent the night before rehearsing answers with Clementine. "I'm not ashamed of my marriage," she practiced. "It has zero impact on patient care." Clementine kissed her forehead. "Then say exactly that. I'll be right outside." The meeting was worse than she imagined. Director Morales listed every complaint. A board member, a gray-haired man with a flag pin, leaned forward. "Miss Harper, in light of the lawsuit and public scrutiny, would you consider a temporary leave of absence?" Brynlee's throat closed. A leave meant no paycheck and their mortgage was already tight. "Are you firing me?" she asked, voice steady even as panic clawed inside. "Not yet," Morales said. "But the optics." That afternoon, Brynlee found Captain Thorne in the physical therapy gym, slowly walking with a cane. He saw her and waved her over. "Heard they're giving you hell," he said bluntly. "My lawyer called. The families want to drag your testimony into the suit. Use your personal life to question your judgment that day." Brynlee felt the floor tilt. "I told my lawyer to fight it," Thorne continued. "You saved my life. I'm not letting them smear you." For the first time in weeks, Brynlee felt a flicker of hope. But hope was dangerous when everything else was burning down. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday. Brynlee received an official letter. Pending investigation into conduct unbecoming, she was suspended without pay effective immediately. The hospital cited ongoing media distraction and the need to protect patient trust. She sat in her car in the parking garage reading the letter over and over until the words blurred. When she finally called Clementine, her voice cracked. "They did it. They suspended me." Clementine met her at home with open arms, but Brynlee pulled away, pacing the living room. "Maybe I should have taken the ring off. Maybe if I had just stayed quiet." "Stop," Clementine said sharply. "You're talking about erasing us like we're something shameful. I won't watch you do that to yourself." The argument that followed was the worst they had ever had. Brynlee accused Clementine of not understanding the financial pressure. Clementine accused Brynlee of letting fear win. They slept in separate rooms for the first time in their marriage. The next morning, Brynlee woke to an empty bed and a note. "I love you, but I need you to love us more than you fear them. I'll be at my sister's if you want to talk." Brynlee stared at the paper, feeling the future they had built cracking apart. She drove to the hospital anyway, not to work but to see Captain Thorne one last time before his discharge. He was packing a small bag when she entered. "They suspended me," she told him flatly. Thorne's face darkened. "Because of the ring?" "It wasn't a question." He set the bag down. "I've been thinking a lot these past days, Nurse Harper. About my daughter. About the things I almost lost because I was too stubborn to listen. I owe you more than thanks." Brynlee shook her head. "You don't owe me anything." "I owe you the truth," he said. "And maybe a little courage." The following Monday, the hospital held a mandatory all-staff meeting in the main auditorium to address recent events and patient safety protocols. Rumors flew that Brynlee's suspension would be made permanent. She wasn't invited, but she showed up anyway, standing in the back row with Clementine beside her. They hadn't fully reconciled, but Clementine had come home the night before, and they had held each other without words. That was enough for now. Director Morales was midway through a bland speech about unity when the auditorium doors opened. Captain Elias Thorne walked in, still using a cane, but dressed in his crisp ferry company uniform. Every head turned. He made his way slowly to the front microphone, ignoring the startled board members. "I asked to speak today," he said, voice carrying through the room, "because the woman who saved my life is being punished for wearing a wedding ring. A ring that means she's married to the person she loves. Just like my own ring means I'm married to my wife of 32 years. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Thorne continued. "I heard the jokes. I heard the insults. And I stayed silent because I was weak and grateful and half dead. But silence has a price and I'm done paying it." He turned, looked straight at the back row and locked eyes with Brynlee. Then slowly, painfully, he lowered himself to one knee right there on the auditorium stage in front of 200 hospital employees, cameras rolling and phones recording. "Nurse Brynlee Harper, I am sorry. For the laughter. For the cruelty. For letting good people make you feel small. You saved my life. The least I can do is stand, well, kneel for yours." The room was dead silent, then erupted. Some clapped. Others looked away ashamed. Director Morales stammered, trying to regain control. But Thorne wasn't finished. "I've spoken with the ferry company and the plaintiff's attorneys. The lawsuit will not use Nurse Harper's personal life against her. In fact, I'm dropping my own countersuit unless this hospital reinstates her immediately with a public apology." Brynlee felt Clementine's hand find hers, squeezing tight. Tears she had held back for weeks finally spilled. When the meeting ended, staff approached her one by one, muttering awkward sorries. Director Morales offered her job back on the spot with full pay and a promise to update hospital policies. Brynlee accepted, but only after looking at Clementine for confirmation. They walked out together into the Seattle sunshine, ring fingers gleaming side by side. Months later, the ferry company installed rainbow flags on all vessels in honor of Captain Thorne's daughter and Brynlee's courage. Brynlee returned to the ER stronger, quieter, more certain. The mocking never completely stopped, but now there were allies too. And every night when she came home, Clementine was waiting with open arms and the same quiet steel that had carried them through the storm. True or false? In the end, silence would have protected Brynlee's job, but only courage protected her soul.